No, no buzz. Just Bees Book Club. Today, I'm gonna talk about Different Seasons by Stephen King. Novella collection, his second, I believe? Maybe his first, I don't remember. I've been reading them in publication order, but it's been like a year between when I read Work and Gunslinger. And then I finished Gunslinger and I read Different Seasons pretty much immediately. And now I'm talking about it. I don't have my copy, I gave it back to my job. And shooting that thumbnail. Real mixed bag. Different Seasons is, of course, the collection that includes Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, which became the film The Shawshank Redemption. A film I've never seen, but every time I've mentioned it to somebody, they're like, I love that movie. Which is not what I remember of its cultural reception, at least in the subculture I was around in. I remember that movie being described as extremely saccharine. But also, I think half the time people were talking about The Green Mile, and I don't really know what the deal is. I have not seen that one either. We don't. Cool. The second story, of course, is Apt Pupil, a movie and novel novella. Novel. It's a novel. It's just a novel just shoved in here. That seems, on the other hand, sort of universally disliked, and for good reason, because it's bad. And then, of course, there's The Body, which got turned into Stand By Me, which I've not seen, and then it ends with The Breathing Method, the only one that has never been adapted for film, and a story that kind of went back and forth on. The biggest surprise for me was that I read The Shawshank Redemption, and I was like, Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, and I thought it was extremely well done. I think it's maybe the best of his story, and probably the best of his stories, like stories, period. That I read, of course. Uh, it's like written. Well, I'll talk about sort of dialect and idiom with The Body, I guess. But like characters generally like pretty solid. The action kind of moves along. It's critical of the prison industrial complex, but in the sort of liberal way that the King generally is. Um, just like all around, like things happen, they are neat things. Then other things happen and they are neat things, and everything sort of wraps up into like a sort of hokey but solid conclusion. Um, was talking to a friend at one point when I was about halfway through, and I think I basically just like explained the end to him, um, and he tried to divert me from understanding it. It's not a subtle book in terms of like how it lays out what's going to happen. That's fine. I'm not really here for plot anyway. But yeah, delightful story. Some absolute bullshit in it, obviously, but Stephen King. Which I should say, listen to the Just King Things episode about this book. It's the reason they're the reason I'm doing this in publication order, because I've so enjoyed listening to their show over the years, and I kind of wanted to just get along with it. They a wonderful episode on Different Seasons that really gets into a lot of the Shawshank stuff. I can't recall if their bonus episode is for that or for the Stand By Me. I think they do Stand By Me on the bonus episode. But yeah, Apt Pupil, like absolute dog shit. Just like bottom tier story. Like bottom tier novel. Not like it's not on the level of a Rage or a Road Work or a Long Walk. Or no, it was Running Man was the one that pissed me off so much, right? I think that was. I think Running Man was one where I was just like, I hate this. um, but like not that much better, honestly. About 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old all-American boy who finds out that one of the people who lives in his little suburban town in California is a former SS commander. He's obsessed with the concentration camps the boy is, and he sort of uses his discovery that this man who lives in the town, sort of under an assumed identity, uh, in order to sort of weasel his way into the man's life and use his identity as sort of leverage to make him talk Todd, the American boy, about what he did during World War II. They end up getting deeply embroiled within each other's lives, and I don't mean that like. I mean they like basically start mutually blackmailing each other with his identity in a way that's like extremely belabored, but also like just like doesn't hold water. I don't think like even a little bit. Like yeah, very quickly I don't remember the Nazi's name, but like very quickly he is like, oh, you know, if they find out about me, then your life is gonna go straight to hell because you knew and you didn't tell anybody, and so that's gonna like be just as bad as the fact that I like a commander committing war crimes in World War II during like actively doing genocide, um, and it just like doesn't hold up from the character of Todd, like from how Todd has been described, like doesn't hold up as a line of logic. But it is a convenient way for King to keep fucking telling this story for like 200 plus pages. So that's great. There's weird, like, unspoken tension between the two of them that is like not explicit, and I don't know if King is like, I don't think, and I know that King is not like trying to do this, but I don't know. There's weird. It's just there's weird tension like sort of throughout the whole thing, um, and there's also this like vague sense of like, well, at least I can be honest about myself and what I've done in the past, and this is good for me in some way on the Nazi side, and then King loses the plot entirely, and they, you know, and are just like killing houseless folks so that they don't have the bad dreams that have been overtaking them ever since these conversations have started and whatever. It's and that lasts another like 80 pages or whatever, and it's just like none of this is anything, and then it ends. Oh yeah, it ends because Todd decides to take his gun out to a little hilly spot that he's been eyeing and like try to kill as many people as he can with his rifle who are driving on the freeway because they're gonna find out that he killed a bunch of houses. I guess it is absolutely nothing of a story. Yeah, and oh, and I hated reading it too. um, then there's the body, which was one of the more interesting ones, I think. The body, as I said, basis for Stand By Me. You know, do you want to see a dead body? Where that line comes from. Group of, again, like 14-year-olds who are all like regulars at this little treehouse club thing they have going, where they smoke Winstons and, uh, you know, bicker about school or whatever. One of them overhears his older brother and his brother's friend freaking out about having stolen a car and joyrode it down a ways and found this kid that had been missing for like 2 weeks and he was dead. So they decide that they're gonna convince each other's parents that they are all gonna go camping in their like one of their other kids' front yards, and they actually go and walk down for like 2.5 days, to find this dead body. Another thing I didn't know about it, which I assume is in the film, is like there's like a fucking standoff with a gun like on the side of the 12-year-olds or whatever against like the older brother's crew about who's going to report this dead body and get the glory for it, I guess. Um, and one of the kids like is the one who's like, again, this is all like a week ago and I have already forgotten all their names. One of the kids is like, you know, this really gifted kid, but he's like from a family of fuck ups or whatever, and he's the one whose like older brother found the body, and he's like, I know I'm never gonna leave this town, but you kid who's going to become a very prolific writer, King, uh, you can get out still, and I'm gonna help you all in, you know, damn hard as I can. And the other two kids are like, I don't know, weird little weirdos who like end up basically drifting apart from the two main ones, and they end up like sort of like heads of the little clubhouse when and they rearrange it with kids more their own age because they're a little bit younger. And uh, and then you get the like post credits sequence of like, you know, this is how this kid ended up, and this is how this kid ended up, and that's after, of course, there's like the post standoff thing when they decide not to report the body of the kid at all anyway, but still there are major retributions from the older brother and his little gang, including like, you know, multiple severe beatings of children. And then yeah, there's like the post credits thing where it's like, and this one died doing this, and this one died on this way, and then there was a car accident, and now I'm just out here, you know, in my mid 30s, making like a really good living as a writer, and really wanted to share the story of what happened to me in that one golden summer. And it's like trite in many ways. There's a couple of action sequences that are very good that I imagine translate pretty well onto film, and like some horror-y bits, like of course of the moment when they're like walking across the train tracks over a big river and the train starts coming, as the action sequence, like it's like well written. It's no, you know, the fight in Tull from the Gunslinger, but it's like solid. And then horror sequence I'm thinking of is of course the moment where they all find a nice pond and they all go swimming and they're very excited about it, and they're covered in leeches, and there's a pretty gross moment where a leech is clinging to the main kid's balls and he has to deal with it and explodes like the second he touches it. And you know, Stephen King things again. I think the main thing though for me was like, number one, I came away from the body being like, that was a really solidly written story. Not really for me. I don't have any like particular interest in revisiting it or ever like feeling like I need to seek out the movie or anything like that. Um, but like my main takeaway from it that I was like, it was like a thing of Stephen King crystallizing in my brain, like locking into place, um, is that Stephen King has this insane ability to write the least believable dialogue in the world. The shit these kids say, I know it's like 1955 Maine or whatever. No one has ever said any of the slang words that these kids say. Like, the way they talk is just completely factually wrong, and it works. It all sort of clings together in its own way that like it is a world built thing. Like it all like, for whatever reason, these kids saying the most inane, impossible to imagine a person saying this things like I had a phrase that I've had in my head for the last like week, just now disappearing from my brain. But there's like an internal consistency to it that makes it work, which is bonkers. And I think that is extremely obvious in the body. It has been clear I think in certain portions of The Stand, even though I just actively try to forget how much I hated that book. I think there's bits of it um, in like the way certain people talk, especially like in short stories. But I want to say like Salem's Lot doesn't quite have this, but it like sort of hints at it. I think with like the younger kid, especially Ben Mears, or I think that's the author. But yeah, I think this is the biggest crystallization of like the way that King can just be like, this person's gonna say this absolutely wacky shit, but he just commits to it so thoroughly that it sort of ends up standing up to scrutiny in terms of the story itself, which I think is a really impressive thing. It's something I'll be hopefully continuing to think about going forward with this project and both No Buzz and being in publication order as long as I feel like doing it. Because I got Christine next, and I'm actually really excited about that one because I've never read it and I do love that movie. And the Just King Things episode around it is really, really good. That also helps. Um, Breathing method. It's a Victorian ghost story. It is like just straight up Victorian ghost story. Although the frame narrative gets a little more weird, weird fiction, sort of little bangers, right? It's got a bit of a sense of a Lovecraft or a Hope Hodgson, kind of Emma Jamesy kind of vibe, in the frame story, which is what's the I'm gonna try the painting book that I read last year. I want to say, um, ooh, it's a more recent thing, but I definitely some of those vibes also. If I remember it all, put it in the things at the end of the thing. Um, the story, so the structure, like many a Victorian ghost story, is there's a club where men get together and they tell story, they like their scotch and their stories with each other at nighttime, and they have a special one that's like the couple days before Christmas, which is their traditional Christmas story. Um, this club is being discovered by our narrator, who has been at this law firm for a long time and hasn't quite made partner and isn't sure if he ever will. But one day he gets invited there, I believe, by his boss, with a sort of hint that like these social connections might help you make partner kind of vibe. He goes there and he hears a couple stories and he sort of relates them in brief to us. Goes back, lives his life, back and forth for a bit. This is where I say that the frame story is a little bit more involved, is not quite like that Victorian style, that Jamesian style, right? Where it's often just literally just a setup. Like, I was sitting by the fire drinking a double rocks or whatever, and a friend told me blah blah blah. Because there come to be implications about what this club is. The story that actually gets told, though, and that takes up probably a little more than half of the breathing method, is a story about the breathing method, which, according to this, would later come to be known as Lamaze, but this doctor who was telling it had invented it before Lamaze. And it's a story of a doctor who gets this patient who is an unwed woman who is pregnant, and basically like forms a very strong bond with her, despite this fact, because it was those times, as he says repeatedly, and then recants on it repeatedly, and is like, but I have to say it because it shouldn't have been a problem, but it was, blah blah blah. The ultimate outcome of the story is basically like the doctor hears that she has gone into labor and arrives at the hospital at just the moment when the cabbie that is driving her to the hospital sort of spins out in the snow, smashes into a statue of the doctor's grandmother who sort of founded the thing, has her head sheared clean off, has just gone into full labor, and the horror story part of this is he basically describes seeing her continue to perform the breathing method or Lamaze, even though her head is over in the gutter and her body is in front of the doctor, and is just like she was just straight up fucking breathing without a head for like the 4 minutes or whatever it took me to deliver her baby. And then that sort of pulls back out into the club thing. There's a bit of discussion, and there's a moment of uncertainty as to the sort of spatiotemporal aspects of the club. That there's a sort of heavy implication that it might be sort of a place between dimensions, that one could walk into it and then walk out of it on another world. So that sort of vibe. That's where the weird fiction comes in, right? I am a huge sucker for both weird fiction and Victorian ghost stories. Like, you can just kind of plop me down in front of most of them. And even if I'm like, that sucked, I'll still be like, I had a good time though. Like, I don't know, there's just something about that particular kind of frame, the sense of, cosmic loneliness or threat that I can unpick for days, right? Like, it is not a hard stone to throw to say that, like, Lovecraft, with his rampant xenophobia, of course thinks that the universe itself is a threat because anything he doesn't understand is a threat, right? This knowledge of not knowing, of reducing people to mindless beings, can easily be projected onto the sense that it is the cosmos itself which is against us, and blah 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 blah, right? Victorians, not a big fan of them either, generally speaking. And still, the fiction that those traditions produce entrances me very dearly. As is the case with King, even though this is far and away the shortest story in this thing, it stretches out way too long. There are just moments that are just like, if this was like 1,000 words shorter, like, which is like nothing for King, I think this could be a really tight story. I think the seeing a dead, like a headless body do Lamaze and then say thank you, basically, is fundamentally corny at its core. I don't think that's like salvageable into something like great, but like, it's a story that I think tightened up a touch, just tuned here and there by somebody who's not King. Because first of all, King doesn't tighten up his stuff when he revisits it. He expands it, of course, but also just, yeah, the text exists as it exists, and so that's fine. But within it, I think there is a stronger story, and because of my presupposition towards all of its generic aspects, and the fact that I think it's like written pretty fucking competently, like, I came away feeling positive about it. And that was nice. It was nice to come away from a King collection and be like, one thing really, just really good. One thing really, really bad. Two things, like, really interesting, informative about King's larger project, I think, in my own brain, and, like, overall net positive. I feel like I haven't had, I feel like I don't expect to have that reaction when I read a King collection of any sort, really, but overall, I mean, I think different seasons kind of shouldn't exist in a weird way, right? Like, who does this? These would make way more sense in, like, spread across 2 or 3, like, short story collections, probably, in terms of how the market works, how publishing works, how people tend to read things. But hey, it's Stephen King in 1982, so who the fuck was gonna say no? And And that's it. I talked about them all. There's an afterword. It's fine. Thanks for not watching.